You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 14th of June 2024 on Monocle Radio. Hello and a warm welcome to The Briefing, coming to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Emma Nelson, and coming up on today's programme, South Africa moves closer to forming a government. We'll look at what shape it could take and how opposing sides are being brought together. Also coming up, Russia is accused of trying to meddle in elections in Moldova. We'll find out how. Our fashion director, Natalie Theodosi, will bring us the latest from Pitti, Uomo in Florence, and
we had lots of success with our heavy canvas bag, which holds a heritage logo from 1970 from Art Basel.
Why art is only the start of what you can buy at Art Basel this week. That's all coming up right here on The Briefing with me, Emma Nelson. And we begin today in South Africa, where the newly elected parliament has been convening to choose the country's next president. It's expected that lawmakers will re-elect President Cyril Ramaphosa to form a coalition. Well, I'm joined on the line from Johannesburg by Elna Schutz, who's a journalist and broadcaster. Good afternoon, Elna.
Good afternoon, Emma.
So the parliament began to sit at 10 this morning. Where are we up to? What's the latest, please?
Yes, we are talking very much in the middle of things happening. So we are expecting lots of changes in the next few hours, but I'll tell you what we know thus far. Members have been sworn into Parliament, and most people were there. The economic freedom fighters did arrive and were sworn in, even though they were late. But the newly formed MK party, led by former President Jacob Zuma, they did not arrive, as we knew they might, in a form of protest, it seems. But everybody else was sworn in. Now we have two nominations for the position of the Speaker of Parliament, and voting is currently underway. Firstly, that's the ANC's Angela Thokozile-Didietsa, who is the current Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And the other nomination goes to the EFF's chairperson, Veronica Mente. So that's the first thing that will be done. Then the deputy speaker position, and then the presidential election will follow in the next few hours.
An incredibly busy day, following on from the fact that the ANC, for the first time in 30 years, were unable to secure enough votes to create an outright majority. And they have now been tasked with forming a coalition, which has been very difficult given the fact that the opposing parties do come from very, very different parts of the political spectrum. How is this being brought together?
Absolutely. And you must remember that in South Africa, according to our law, you only have 2 weeks after the election results are announced to get that government or coalition set in stone and start meeting in Parliament. So it's been quite rushed and quite tense for the country in that sense. So there were lots of late night coalition talks happening in the last weeks. And what then happened was that the ANC announced it would pursue a GNU, a new acronym that South Africans have to learn, a Government of National Unity. We have had one before in 1994, but basically this means a wide range of parties are included in the legislature and would vote on major ideas, but they would get different ministerial portfolios and powerful positions in exchange, but it wouldn't be a official coalition in the classic sense. So when this was announced, the EFF opposed it if certain parties were to take part, and the MK wouldn't be a great match for this because they would like to change the constitution. So we've been waiting to see what comes out, and a deal has been signed only about an hour ago in the break of Parliament, and the ANC, DA and IFP have agreed to this GNU, Government of National Unity. So this short agreement paper that we have now seen signed details some of the basics around how decisions would be made, how conflicts would be brokered, etc. And we'd wait for a bigger agreement. But basically what that means for today is likely Cyril Ramaphosa will become president again. The speaker position is likely to go to Didiza, and the deputy speaker position is likely to go to the DA.
Just explain to us how a unity government could benefit South Africa.
So you have to remember that that, as you said earlier, there are lots of different political stances in our parliament, and plenty of tension between them. So a unity government, in one sense, would hopefully represent different views and allow for certain decisions to be made, even though an official coalition in the classic sense hasn't been signed. So hopefully it would help in that way. But it must be said, after the ANC lost its complete or majority control, and it suggested the GNU, not everybody agreed. Other parties disagreed. Alliance partners of the ANC had issues, and then even factions inside of the ANC. So it's not all smooth sailing.
How stable, though, could we be looking in terms of the way that South Africa views its future? Because for the last few years, at least, the amount of infighting, the allegations of corruption, the issues besetting South Africa, which have made it the most divided country on earth. Is there a sense that a unity government could adhere to some principles that came out in 1994 when South Africa came together, that actually that could create a much more powerful and indeed stable country?
There is indeed a cautiously hopeful stance in that direction, that because these very different parties would now have to work together to some degree, hopefully there would be a higher sense of collaboration and even accountability. And yet it must be said, these large problems across the country can't just be fixed with, one parliamentary sitting or even one agreement. So whether this is actually going to lead to stability or just lots of tic-tac-toe changes, we'll have to see.
Tell us a little bit. I mean, you mentioned the fact that the MK party is boycotting the Parliament today and the opening of Parliament, and Jacob Zuma being a very, very loud presence in South African politics. The fact that they're not part of this unity government, what does that do?
So they are the third largest party elected, and the sense was very much that those votes would have gone to the ANC or perhaps even the EFF if the MK party hadn't been there. So they definitely do have power, and it also brings the focus on them when the party is asking for things like changes to the constitution, that normally wouldn't have been there. So while we're not really sure how this will play out, we do see that eyes are on them now, and their protest or their boycott is going to have to be taken seriously to some degree.
Elna, thank you so much for joining us on the line from Johannesburg. That was Elna Schutz. You're listening to The Briefing with me, Emma Nelson. The time here in London is 9 minutes past midday. Let's have a look at today's headlines. Here's Monocle's Carlotta Rebello.
Thanks, Emma. Israeli forces have advanced deeper into western Rafah, following one of the worst nights of bombardment from air, ground and sea. Israel said its assault aimed to wipe out Hamas's last intact combat units in the city. Over the past day, the military said it struck 45 targets across the Gaza Strip from the air, including military structures, militant cells, rocket launchers and tunnels. Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is reshuffling his cabinet after his centre-right party performed worse than expected in the European Parliament elections. His New Democracy Party came first in the EU election with 28.3% of the vote, but missed the 33% target Mitsotakis had set during the campaign. He has ruled out calling a snap election. And New Zealand's government is reforming the country's firearm laws, which have been in place for more than 40 years. Associate Justice Minister Nicole McKee said an update to the country's Arms Act was needed to ensure it is fit for purpose for today and into the future. The previous government had tightened firearm laws following the Christchurch shooting massacre, which killed 51 people. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you very much indeed, Carlotta. Now, Moldova, like half the world's population this year, is holding elections. In October, there will be a vote on both the presidency and on EU membership. But 4 months in advance, the US, UK and Canada have warned that Russia may be interfering. Well, let's get more on this with Nikolai Ratoy, who's an associate director at business intelligence consultancy Alaka. A very good afternoon to you, I should say, Nikolai.
Good afternoon, Emma. Nice to speak to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Tell us, what exactly are these accusations that the US, UK and Canada are making against Russia?
It's pretty simple. And on the one hand, it's nothing new. The US, the UK and Canada are accusing the Kremlin of what essentially the Moldovan government has been accusing Moscow for at least the last year, if not longer. That is to interfere in the electoral process. As you said, October is an important time because President Sandu is hoping to be re-elected, and she is holding a very important pro-EU referendum, which she hopes and her administration hopes would kill once and for all, or would at least silence the criticism that she's been hearing with regards to whether Moldova wants indeed to go into Europe or whether Moldova's population wants to go in the sort of eastern direction. So the accusations are that Moscow will try to interfere via illegal financing, which they've been doing for regularly for the past 6 months. And the worry there, as far as I understand, is that they might try to incite some violent protests.
Do you say there's evidence of illegal financing? Who are they financing, and what are they? What extra evidence is there that they are perhaps harnessing social media, for example?
The financing mechanism has been very well documented by the Moldovan intelligence service with the help of the Western partners, including the UK. The financial flows have been traced through bitcoins. There's been a very, I don't want to call it sophisticated, but it was quite a well established mechanism of bringing cash through by couriers, passengers traveling from Russia through the airports. There's been a network of people within Moldova distributing the money to actors for the purpose to buy votes and things like this. And social media has been a great tool to influence historically, but also recently. For example, you might have seen that the pro-Russia leader of the autonomous region of Gagauzia, which is in the south, has been going to Moscow frequently, and things like a photo op with Vladimir Putin in Sochi at a summit a few weeks ago, or more than a month ago, I think, is a great thing to be posting, resharing, and so on the likes of Facebook, which actually, I think a few days ago, Facebook banned the social media profiles most or the leading Moldovan politicians backed by the Kremlin.
How can this be stopped?
Good question. I think doing more of the same, bringing it to the attention of the partners, which I think the three governments have done via the statement, but also to go after the money and try to stop the channels, because Moldova is a very poor country, and it's one of the ways the Kremlin has managed to influence so far the electoral process, like in the regional elections. Unfortunately, people do vote when. Unfortunately, it is possible to buy votes, and if you do stop the money going into the country, I think the result will be there.
And we are obviously not just talking about the presidency, but we're talking about a vote on EU membership. I mean, what can the EU do about this? Obviously, Moldova is trying to get into the club of 27, but it needs to prove that it is very resistant to corruption and influence in order for it to join. Where does it stand on the European Union?
I think the vote that the Sandu administration got, both in 2020 when President Sandu was elected and when her party was elected and got majority in the parliament in 2021, that was a clear vote by the Moldovan society, indicating that the people they want Moldova to join the EU. What can the EU do to help? I think the EU need to show more support to the Sandu administration. They've done it well, but it's about remaining determined to continue and supporting not only financially, which is of course crucial, but via public campaigns, via communications, via sending the message that they understand what Moldova is dealing with, and that they're willing to help in going forward as well. In December, Moldova got the green light it got a candidate status from the EU, and now it's a technical conversation about when will the negotiations actually kick off. But in the last 12 months, and obviously because of the geopolitical context, because of the position Ukraine has found itself in, Moldova has benefited with regards to the speed that the candidate status has been awarded to Chisinau.
Nicolae Ratoi, thank you so much for joining us on Monocle Radio. You're listening to The Briefing. Now, this week, the fair of all fairs, Art Basel, is happening. Many will walk away the proud owner of a new bit of wall candy. But what if your pockets aren't quite that deep? Well, this year, for the very first time, there's an Art Basel shop, curated by the queen of the concept store, Sarah Andelman. The shop features art, books, magazines and mementos, among many other things. And there's a selection of artist products and new exclusive items, including a limited edition capsule collection made in collaboration with the artist Christine Sun Kim. And most importantly, the store is in person only. You won't be able to find its most interesting contents online after this weekend. Well, Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs sat down with Sarah Andelman next to the bustling shop to find out more.
It's the very first shop for Art Basel, so it's a new experiment. I think it was really the moment. It makes so much sense when you visit the fair to have a little gift shop at the exit, and it was really fun to work on the selection of products with a mix of existing edition, multiples from galleries, from artists and publishers, and to create a new collection exclusive for Art Basel with a heritage logo or in collaboration with the artist Christine Sun-Kim. And voilà, this is really a first time for Art Basel in Basel, and in the future, each, hopefully, Paris, Miami will have a complete different selection. So I think it's fun to think of a shop for 1 week only. It will last, and there is no online, so really, if you want to enjoy the experience, you have to come in person.
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable that there wasn't a shop before, that this is the first one. But could you tell me a little bit about the process that you've gone through to decide on this selection of products that are in front of us today?
So obviously what I thought is only related to art. Sometimes there is some beautiful object, but for me they are more into design world than art. So voilà, that was a rule. An artist needs to be involved in the product, but I love to have a diversity. It can be books, obviously, but to have some cushion, pillow, to have some candles, to have some accessories like scarves. So I try to have this diversity to show how an artist's product can have lots of different form, shapes. For the plates, the scarf, it's a tradition of artist product. And yes, there are so many artist products. So what I done is to ask the artist list, which will be in Unlimited, which is just here, and that's how we decided to do something more special with Christine Sun-Kim. But we have Nathalie Dupasquier, she's in Unlimited, and we have some prints from the wrong shop with Nathalie Dupasquier, so it can have this bounce, this exchange between the exhibition and the products, which I think is important.
And tell me a little bit more about the collaboration with Christine Sun-Kim and why she was the right artist for the very first Art Basel shop.
Well, I love her energy, of course. So her work is related to science language and the sound, and she has been very, very collaborative, working because it was made in short time. But so she's a young mom. She has a baby 4 months old. That I proposed to do a baby rattle, these toys, and we had to find lots of suppliers. So we found this company in France, Nina Miles, who is doing wood then rattle official for kids, but we wanted to do a scarf, so we had to find the right company in Italy. We did these plates with No Sans Raison ni Moche. So what we did is really to communicate as a ping pong. I proposed products, she confirmed the one she wanted to do, and then we found the different nice quality, sustainable suppliers. I look forward to the next artist collaboration for Art Basel, because it's really a great opportunity, I think, for both Art Basel and the artists to develop this kind of unexpected products.
And a final question, one that's maybe a little bit unfair, but if there is one product that you had to choose for people who are coming to Art Basel to come and check out, which one are you most kind of proud of, or the one that brings you the most joy when you spot it on the shelves here in the shop?
Oh, there is a lot. It's true, it's difficult, but apparently we had lots of success with our heavy canvas bag, which holds the heritage logo from 1970 from Art Basel. But I love that we launched a worldwide premiere of the Cindy Sherman skate room collaboration. It's an open edition, so much more affordable, and I think it's great to be the first in the world with this collaboration.
And that was Sarah Andelman there, talking to Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs about the very first Art Basel shop, which is well worth stopping by if you're at the fair this weekend. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Let's head from Switzerland to Italy now to join Natalie Theodosi, Monocle's fashion director, who's just departed Florence from Pitti Uomo, of the fabled trade fair for menswear, and is en route to Milan. A very good afternoon to you, Natalie.
Good afternoon.
So let's talk Pitti Uomo. What's the atmosphere been like?
So it's been quite interesting. You could really tell that there were lower attendance numbers this season. I mean, even just walking around the fair, you had to make your way through big crowds in the past. And this time, you could just tell that you could make your way around much easier. There were less people. One of the designers that's a real regular every season told me, he would always get his lunch at a focaccia stand nearby, and it would take him usually 20 minutes. This time it would take him 2 minutes every day. So less people coming in, but still a really interesting international mix of brands. And I think the ones that did come were real specialists, and they had a little bit more of an opportunity to stand out, given that it was less crowded.
So if you are able to do that, and fewer numbers means it's a harder task, but you do get that opportunity to showcase. So what are brands trying to do at Pitti Uomo this year?
I think it is changing quite a bit, the goal of being at a trade fair like Pitti Uomo. Before, it used to be getting as many orders as possible, and the target was always the big department stores, particularly European and American ones. But this time, the brands that I was speaking to, which are a little bit more niche, a little bit more specialist now, they are more concerned in just being at the fair, making connections also with the other brands around them. They're finding their next collaborators, they're finding their next supplier and manufacturer. And when it comes to making partnerships with retailers, I think they're a lot more concerned, rather than getting the big orders from the traditional stores, in finding the right partners. And it seemed like Japanese were out in full force again in Florence, and smaller boutiques, and working with the brands to make limited edition orders and form longer term partnerships. So I think the relationship between retailer and brand is kind of shifting and becoming, to be honest, a little bit healthier, and not just focused on volume and numbers.
Quickly, you have left Pitti Uomo. You've headed up to Milan. It doesn't start until this weekend proper, but are there any expectations as to what happens in Milan?
Milan, I think, is a little bit more predictable, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think we're all kind of waiting to see the Prada show on Sunday. That's always a highlight, and the names like Fendi and Emporio Armani. And this time around, a lot of the British designers as well have moved over to Milan to show their collections. So younger, more edgy names like Martin Rose, the Georgian designer David Koma, who's known for women's wear, will debut his first menswear collection here this weekend. So it's a really nice mix of familiar names that always give us something to think about, like Prada, and some younger international brands.
Natalie Theodosi there, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing on Monocle Radio. An excerpt there from the opera Le Conte Horry by Rossini, a rather fruity work involving men dressing up as nuns to raid a castle and its contents of wine and women. It is a great watch and a fabulous listen too. But until now, if you're blind and a music lover, then a trip to the opera can be far from enjoyable, because your ability to absorb the music in all its beauty and intensity has been compromised by the fact that the libretti are translated for you in real time by an audio description, and that rather gets in the way. Well, the New Zealand Opera claims to have fixed this, and to explain all, I'm joined by Lisette Raymer, who's the Europe correspondent at News Hub New Zealand. A very good afternoon to you, Lisette.
Good afternoon.
So at the moment, if you go to the opera and you are watching it, you get surtitles where your scripts and the lyrics of the libretti are translated for you. If you are blind, you have to have that done through an audio description, don't you? And as a result, it's just a really unpleasant listen.
Yeah, exactly. The whole experience is interrupted by the audio descriptions being played to you as the performance is taking place. So it's all very disjointed and also a little bit delayed. So your experience isn't necessarily matching up, or it's not even coming close, really, if we're honest, to matching up with someone with perfect vision sitting right next to you. So what the New Zealand Opera has trialled and has found to be hugely successful, which is incredibly exciting, not just for those in New Zealand, but hopefully for those who get to experience it in coming years as it spreads around the globe, fingers crossed, is that they're able to, through this new technology, provide real-time braille surtitles that those who are visually impaired or blind can read and access in real time throughout the performance. So they don't have that interruption, and they can have it instantly, just as anyone who's there watching the surtitles come up on their screen. So it's incredibly inclusive, incredibly exciting, and a game changer. I mean, people have described it as life-changing for them in terms of how they can now enjoy that experience.
Indeed, what's been the general reaction to it? You said that some people have called it life-changing, but this really is a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a massive deal, and I think for a lot of us who do have perfect sight, or we're fortunate in that way, we possibly can't even understand the extent of just how exciting this is for people. But the community, certainly in New Zealand, it was trialled, first of all, just in Auckland, and those who have attended and taken part in the trial have just been raving about it. And that is what has led to the New Zealand Opera committing not just to doing it as a one-off, but to making sure all of their shows in the future incorporate this new technology. And the hope, of course, is now that it can spread far and wide, not just around New Zealand, but around the world, and not even just with the opera. They're hoping that the same technology can be translated and used across theatre all around the world, not just purely the opera. So there's huge potential for this, and as a New Zealander, I'm quite proud, to be honest, because it's that little country that's always punching above their weights and coming up with new ideas, and this one really does seem to be really exciting for the community that is otherwise sometimes a little bit excluded when it comes to the full experience at the opera.
And the interesting thing about using this opera in particular, Le Conte is because it had been translated into not just standard English. It had been really, they'd thought long and hard about this and had translated it into New Zealand slang.
Yes, and that's the other thing, I guess, which is why I think people were particularly excited about it, because this opera has a comedic twist. Usually people that were visually impaired and having to have the audio descriptions playing out, it was a little bit delayed, and they'd get the laughs all a little bit later, so they'd be laughing at different times to the rest of the audience and not really keeping up with the general flow of it. And so I think that is part of what makes this so inclusive, is that now with the braille there, they can enjoy those jokes and respond to them and interact with the the show, with the opera, the same as anybody else. And totally, they've a part of that comedy has been the incorporation of the Kiwi slang, which just makes it all that much more enjoyable and inclusive for everyone. But yeah, no, it's a 10 out of 10 rave reviews as far as everyone in New Zealand is saying.
Delighted to hear it. Journalist Lizette Raymer, thank you so much for joining us on Monocle Radio. And that's all the time we have for today's briefing. The warmest of thanks to all my guests and to the producer, Carlos Furabello. Our researcher was George Ruskin and our studio manager was Christy O'Grady. The briefing is back on Monday at the same time. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend.